My name is Denise Jorgens, and I'm the Director of International House here at the University of Chicago. On behalf of the International House community, we are so pleased to host the inaugural Václav Havel Lecture and to welcome His Excellency Petr Pavel, the President of the Czech Republic, to the University of Chicago. A bit of background on International House. This is a special year for the International House's worldwide organization. Our first International House just celebrated its 100th anniversary this past weekend. International House of Chicago was founded in 1932 by John D. Rockefeller Jr., and so our 100th anniversary is just a few years away. From the day International House opened its doors, our mission has been to promote cross-cultural understanding, mutual respect, and friendship among students and scholars, and on behalf of the people of metropolitan Chicago and the broader communities that we serve toward individuals of all nations and backgrounds. Through the International House student experience and our internationally focused public programming, such as today's event, International House is dedicated to transforming people's lives for a better world. This mission is further extended through the work of the International House's worldwide network, which is currently an organization of 16 International Houses on 4 continents. We invite you to join us throughout the academic year for many of our other Global Voices, Performing Arts, and Lecture Series programs. On behalf of the Global International House community, I want to welcome you again and thank you for joining us. And now I'd like to invite Dean Amanda Woodward, Dean of the Social Sciences Division, to formally introduce our speaker and to begin today's program. Thank you.
Good morning and welcome to you all. I'm so glad to have you all with us. I am delighted to welcome you to the inaugural Václav Havel Lecture, established to honor the memory of the Czech playwright, dissident, and statesman, and to explore his enduring legacy. This lecture series is the result of a generous gift from Gabriel Eichler and Tatiana Eichler. The first of the 4 lectures in this series, today's talk, will explore, among other topics, Havel's legacy as a statesman devoted to Europe as a task. As the last president of Czechoslovakia and the first of the independent Czech Republic, Havel guided his nation out of communism and toward an integrated Europe. Today's speaker, President Petr Pavel, has carried on Havel's mission of ensuring safe and united Europe his entire career as a military commander, representative to the European Union, and now as president. It is my very great honor to introduce His Excellency Petr Pavel, President of the Czech Republic, who will speak today on the Transatlantic Bond, challenges and opportunities. Mr. Pavel has many years of military experience spanning from 1983 to 2018, ascending from a special purpose airborne reconnaissance platoon leader to the chief of the General Staff of the Czech Armed Forces. He chaired the NATO Military Committee from 2015 to 2018, further solidifying his expertise and leadership within the international defense community. Throughout his career, he led various positions, including commander of the Special Forces Brigade and the deputy military representative of the Czech Republic to the European Union. After retiring from the Army, Mr. Pavel continued his dedication to public service, engaging in civil society initiatives and as a freelance lecturer on defense, security, and international relations. In 2022, he announced his candidacy for the presidential election, which he won in January of 2023, and subsequently in March of that year, he was inaugurated as the 4th president of the Czech Republic. After Mr. Pavel's address, he will be joined in conversation with Benjamin Frommer, Associate Professor of History at Northwestern University. Professor Frommer is an expert in the history of Central Europe with a particular expertise in Czech and Slovak history. He is the author of a book entitled National Cleansing, Retribution Against Nazi Collaborators in Post-War Czechoslovakia, and he has co-edited a recent volume entitled Intermarriage from Central Europe to Central Asia, Mixed Families in the Age of Extremes. His research and writing have been supported by a number of important societies, including the Council of Learned Societies and the Fulbright Program. Now I am extremely honored and grateful to welcome to the podium President Petr Pavel.
Thank you. Many thanks to all of you and good morning. Madam Dean, professors, students, ladies and gentlemen. It is a really great honor for me to be here with you today at the Chicago University. For the Czechs, this country, this city, this university holds a deep historical significance. Chicago was once home to one of the largest Czech communities outside Europe. And it was here that the Czechs could articulate their dreams for freedom and democracy. A central guiding figure of these aspirations was Professor Tomáš Garrigue Masaryk, who later became the first president of a new independent state, Czechoslovakia. In the early 20th century, Masaryk spent a significant amount of time here in Chicago, where he lectured at this very university and built strong connections with the Czech American community. During World War I, it was in the United States that Masaryk, as the head of Czechoslovak National Council, gained crucial support for the cause of Czech and Slovak independence from Austro-Hungarian Empire, which had shown itself incapable of any reform. For Masaryk, Czechoslovak independence was not just an expression of President Woodrow Wilson's principle of self-determination. It was part of a larger vision that he called a world revolution, which he saw as the culmination of the long struggle between reactionary theocracy and democracy. Masaryk believed that Czechoslovak independence had profoundly ethical implications. He saw the fight for democracy not just as a quest for political freedom, but as a commitment to the ethical advancement of humanity, where moral responsibility and democratic spirit would be the foundation of governance. While Masaryk's principles proved timeless, his optimism did not. In the century that followed, the Czech nation twice fell under a despotism far more oppressive than the Austro-Hungarian rule he had once opposed. After 5 years of Nazi terror, the Czechs lost their sovereignty to Soviet Russia and their soul to a grand illusion. When the attempt to reform and humanize socialism in the late 60s of the last century was crushed by Soviet-led Warsaw Pact countries, it seemed as though no alternative was possible. Yet some, from leading public intellectuals to ordinary people, never lost their hope. Chief among them was Václav Havel, dissident, playwright, and the figurehead of the Velvet Revolution of 1989, and finally, once again, president of a democratic Czechoslovakia and later Czechia. It is no coincidence that this lecture series is named after him, for his vision continues to resonate in these days. Havel believed in the role of Europe as a moral and political force in the world. He famously described Europe as a task, highlighting not just the geographical or political realities of Europe, but its understanding as a project which requires sustained attention and continual effort. To secure this achievement of democratic transition, Havel championed the integration of Czechia into Western political and security architecture. But more than that, Havel understood that the relationship between Europe and the United States was critical for maintaining global stability, defending shared democratic values, and facing the emerging challenges of globalization. Today, with the rise of our geopolitical rivals and the tragic return of war in Europe, the question of the meaning and strength of the transatlantic bond has resurfaced with new urgency. What part can and should the transatlantic alliance play in terms of our security interest, providing economic stability, and in shaping global governance? If the transatlantic alliance is worthwhile to us, how can we overcome the occasional political divides? I am aware of the elements of skepticism here in the US towards the transatlantic bond, with focus slowly shifting to the rise of Asia and to pressing domestic concerns. The central issue, of course, has been the question of burden sharing within the North Atlantic Alliance. Indeed, for far too long, European countries relied on the optimistic yet mistaken premise that extensive military capabilities were no longer needed. As Europeans, we believed in the transformative power of international trade and benevolent effects of international cooperation. I take as part of my political mission to ensure that Europe has learned the right lessons. The transatlantic bond is always a two-way street, and things have already taken a positive turn. As we could have noticed at the Washington summit in July, NATO allies are finally delivering on their commitments, making the alliance more credible and more relevant in today's rapidly changing world. A record number of allies, including Czechia, will meet the goal of spending at least 2% of GDP on defense this year and the years to come. Yet, we should not be too fixated on numbers. It is closing European capability gaps that matters much more. We should not lose sight of the overall political direction. As I said during my visit in July this year, European efforts should be seen as building along with the United States, not as aimed against it. The US needs an equal partner on its side, not a dependent and quite often a spoiled child. We understand that the US expects Europe to take a stronger role and shoulder more responsibilities within NATO. I often hear that the biggest threat to the US interest is not Russia, but communist China, and that Russia should be managed by Europe. Certainly, allies need to match the robust US commitment to Europe, both to safeguard our own security and for the sake of America's prospects of remaining the undisputed transatlantic and Pacific power. However, there is a larger deal at play. While Europe increases its efforts, it is also in America's interest to ensure that Ukraine and Europe do not fall victim to Russian aggression and growing influence. A Russian victory would be a significant failure for the democratic world and would greatly empower and encourage our authoritarian rivals. Today, after years of illusions, we finally understand that it is Putin's goal to impose a new security architecture upon Europe. Resisting Russian imperialism is essential. It should be viewed as part of a broader struggle to uphold the global order defined by the UN Charter and international law. The post-war global order is more than just a historical coincidence. It represents a significant achievement that puts rules over raw military power. It is worth fighting for because only within a cooperative and predictable international system can we hope to address global challenges and prevent a widespread security meltdown. Ladies and gentlemen, in making the Transatlantic Bond a centerpiece of my country's European and international policy, Václav Havel had a visionary impact. Since joining NATO 25 years ago and the European Union 5 years later, my country has enjoyed freedom, security, and economic stability. We deeply value the United States as our crucial partner, and there is no better place to reflect on the strength of this partnership than Chicago, the birthplace of Czech aspirations for a free and democratic statehood. Thank you. And as we start the Václav Havel series of lectures, let me present the moderator with a small gift linked to Václav Havel.
Hello. A friend of mine actually brought home from Prague in 1989 a Havel Náhrad, Havel to the Castle poster, which I still treasure to today. And I will put that together with this wonderful gift. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I would like to open up with a few questions of my own. We're going to discuss for a bit. And then after, in about 20 minutes, we will open it up for questions from the audience as a whole. At that point, I will signal to you, and we encourage students first to ask questions and then the rest of the audience. So I'd like to begin with, of course, Václav Havel, who spoke so eloquently and movingly about. When I think back to 1989, Václav Havel was transformed himself overnight from a playwright and a dissident into a president, and then he became a politician and had to become a politician. In your career, you've moved from being an officer, a commander, also now into the presidency, where you have to play the role also as a politician. I was wondering if you saw, and as a statesman, if you saw in Václav Havel's transition and his career any models or lessons that help you to make that change.
That's a difficult question. It's always extremely difficult trying to fit into someone's shoes, and I think I would never dare trying to resemble or going the same way as Václav Havel, even though I was inspired in many ways by what he did. But it's also worth of reminding that quite often, especially with some distance of time, we have a tendency to idealize not only events but also personalities. Even Václav Havel was not sure about the membership of Czech Republic, at that time Czechoslovakia, in NATO. In his early years, he was more a philosopher and idealist, believing that the world is now heading towards the era of smooth relationship and good cooperation between old enemies, and that we can get rid of not only Warsaw Pact, but also dissolve NATO, because there is no need for it when there is no enemy. But later on, when he was exposed to especially the views of Madeleine Albright and other people who changed his mind and started believing that there is nothing like problem-free future, and that the best place for new states of Central Europe will be within the established and proven structures. And that's why he was trying to convince everyone that our place is within these structures and there is no other alternative. And he was right, because if we were out of NATO and EU, we would be in a very difficult position today as a number of countries that were left behind.
You spoke about just now and earlier about Václav Havel's legacy internationally. What are your thoughts of his legacy domestically among the Czech people, perhaps in this relationship, as you just mentioned, to the United States and to the rest of Europe?
I believe that he played a crucial role in the first years of our regained independence, because he was a value-focused man. He was very good in articulating the ideas why we should build on these values and why we should take responsibility for the whole family of democratic countries. While people who came after him, who replaced him in the office, were much more pragmatic and economy focused. And rightfully so, because we had to go through a very difficult period of privatization of industry. And for that period, Václav Havel was not simply the right person, and he knew that. He knew that it was simply not his time. He was not happy with all these economic and very pragmatic issues of party politics. Actually, he hated party politics, and he didn't want to be involved. But he grew up into an understanding that he has to deal with political parties, and he understood the reality. But I think he was exactly the man we needed for the first period. But later on, we go back to his legacy, because we realized that one of the biggest mistakes we had over these 35 years of transition was the lack of education towards values. And that the prosperity and good life from democracy is not just a benefit, but it's also a matter of responsibility. You have to simply give something back. And that's why I think what he was trying to tell us about civil society and its role is probably more valid than it was then, because we all tempted to believe that democracy is simply about having better life.
Interesting. The Czech Republic, as you mentioned, Czech Republic joined NATO actually despite those concerns before it joined the European Union by several years. Do you feel that has any sort of legacies of the relationship between the Czech Republic, Poland, as well as the other Visegrad countries, with the transatlantic relationship versus internal European partnerships?
Well, I think that after that first period of thinking of no blocks, no military blocks future, Václav Havel understood very well that security is a precondition for any other development and stability. That's why he focused so much on bringing us to NATO, probably earlier than to the EU. And it was only because of his great relationship with Madeleine Albright, through her with Bill Clinton, that made us member of that first group that was accepted to NATO in 1999. I was very happy to be a little part of it, because the transition from Warsaw Pact country to NATO was entirely different. And probably one experience that I made at that time was that within Warsaw Pact, everything was guided from Moscow. So everyone was waiting for instructions. And the whole system was built as that, in civilian life, in military, everywhere. And when we first got the group of advisors from the US, they came to the room and said, "So what are your ideas?" I said, "Well, we were waiting for your ideas." I said, "No, it doesn't work that way. You know? So tell us what you want to achieve, and we will facilitate the way towards your objectives. But you have to be clear, what do you want?" And this absolutely changed our approach, and it took obviously a couple of years of transition. But over these years, when we are part of NATO, I think we were exposed to numerous situations where we had an opportunity to prove that we are a valuable member and that our allies can count on us.
So one of those situations has developed, of course, in the past 2.5, almost 3 years now, tragically and horrifically, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which has, in many ways, I think, put the Czech Republic much more on the international scene in ways that were not necessarily the case in the previous decade, both external because of the countries and your support for Ukraine, but also internally because the Czech Republic is a country that has taken in one of the largest number of Ukrainian refugees, and in fact, I believe by proportion, per capita, the largest number. And could you speak for a bit, both externally and internally, if you could, about how the war has changed, transformed the position and the internal politics of the Czech Republic?
Well, I think for most of the European population, it was hard to believe that the war came back to Europe. After almost 30 years from the wars in former Yugoslavia, we all believed that the war as an institute is over for Europe. And it will only belong to history books and movies. So it created a kind of a shock. And the tendency not to believe was behind the slow reactions. It started in 2013 when the situation were developing towards the annexation of Crimea. But the very fact that we were so used to living in peace was simply behind the lack of decisions to deter Russian aggression against Ukraine. When it happened, it didn't wake up everyone, but many were brought to an understanding that we are in a new reality. In Czech Republic, it took some time to convince the population and political leaders that it's not just a limited regional conflict for Donbass or Crimea, that it is a continuation of Russian policies. Russia, from the Tsars through a number of party leaders up to President Putin, is simply an imperialist country. And they were never hiding their objectives. So I was always wondering why didn't we listen what President Putin was saying? Because from 2007, when he addressed the Munich Security Conference, he was very clear what he was up to. But we were simply thinking it was just a political narrative, nothing more. Now we are in a sobering period, realizing that it is our future to confront Russia that will behave as an imperialist state, and that we have to do our best to deter Russia from any further aggression. As for Ukraine, what I'm always trying to put forward, both for our population as well as for my meetings with leaders from Africa, Latin America, it's not about if we like or dislike Ukraine. It's about if we like or dislike living in a world where the rules matter, where we respect the rules that were agreed and respected from all sides. Because this is the only precondition for living in a stable environment. Many countries understand that, and they signed up to that idea when they joined the declaration in Switzerland, in a peace summit co-organized by Switzerland and Ukraine. I believe that we have no other choice than to support Ukraine for Russia not to succeed in Ukraine. Because Russian success in Ukraine would only encourage not only Russia, but also other authoritarian regimes to go that way. Because they would start trying what they can afford, how far we let them go.
And internally, being the president now of a country with 300,000 refugees, does that change the position for the Czech Republic, both internally, but also its relationship to Ukraine and to the war?
You know, being almost a neighbor to the war zone means that you feel the impacts more directly. And that was the reason of the tremendous wave of solidarity at the very beginning. First, it was a little bit easier for Ukrainian refugees to come to Czech Republic because we had a quite strong Ukrainian minority even before the war. So they had some people to link up with when they came. But many people were offering their houses, money, material for people who were coming from the war zone. But of course, solidarity will start fading over time. And we see it now not only in Czech Republic, but everywhere, that the effect of what is called the war fatigue is clearly seen in Czech Republic as well. Moreover, some populists are abusing the situation and taking political points on the cheap arguments. We are spending billions on Ukrainians instead of spending this money on our own people. We should send all Ukrainian men to fight the war, not enjoying their life here. And of course, these views get some traction. But in general, I believe that still most of our population understand that it is in our own vital interest to support Ukraine because we are supporting our own security.
Great. So if people would, I'm going to ask another question, we'll continue the discussion, but if people would like to move forward towards the microphones, which are in the back, especially, again, students, and then we'll open it up for discussion. You hinted, I'll ask the final question, you hinted at populism. One of the developments of the past 10 years, but now even more recently, is the Visegrad Group, which there was an idea in the 1990s that Poland, the Czech Republic, Slovakia, and Hungary could form a bloc or at least an alliance to advance certain interests. But now, particularly on the issue of the war, Russia's war on Ukraine, first Hungary and now more recently Slovakia, has adopted a position that is at odds with the Czech Republic and generally Poland. How have neighborly, internal to the region relations developed, and how can they move forward with such fundamental international divides?
If I simplify the picture, it will look like three countries, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, and Poland, were determined to get to NATO and to the EU as quickly as possible. So they had their common goal. Later on, we split with Slovakia, so it was 4 countries. That's why Visegrad 4. That was a unifying factor. But once we got in, then there was a lack of purpose suddenly. So there was a period of seeking for new contents. We found it on a number of areas and at a number of levels. People-to-people contact, business-to-business, academia to academia, and then parliaments and top leaders, even defense. Now it seems more as Visegrad 2+2 than Visegrad 4. But at the same time, whenever I am asked if the time has not come to leave the structure or to dissolve it, I always say it's much easier to destroy something than to build it. So even if we disagree in a number of crucial issues of foreign policy, it doesn't mean that all other levels don't work. We still have many cultural ties, people-to-people contacts, schools. So why to stop something that is working? So our focus is to stay with where we have a common purpose, common goals, common agenda, and leave aside for some time those issues that are controversial. politicians come and go, states remain and people remain. So over time, we will have different leaderships in all the countries, and suddenly they may find the platform useful again. So we will leave it open.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So we will open it up again. The first questions we would like to take from students. We will have about 20 minutes in all before, and I'll make this announcement now, at the end of the question and answer session, and please make sure they're questions. We will, please wait until the president and his entourage leaves, and then you are invited to leave here. There will students be here to take you outside and bring you to the monument, the Maastricht Monument on the Midway, where there will be a ceremony there as well. So that will all take place in about 20 minutes. So now I'd like to open it up. Please identify yourself to the president and ask a question that ends in a question mark.
I hope it works. Hi, my name is Ksenia. I'm a third-year student here, and I'm from Ukraine. So thank you for all of the support you provide, because I was once a refugee, and I relied completely on the help that European Union provided for us. In a recent speech, like yesterday, I believe, you mentioned Ukraine should be realistic about ending the war, which I agree with. However, how can world leaders expect us to give up territories if we're restricted from using the resources provided to us? Beyond fears of a third world war, why is Ukraine prohibited from using long-distance American missiles? Do you think this limitation will be lifted, and does it depend on the outcome of the US election?
An easy question. Yeah.
Great question to begin with. Yeah, sure. No, quite often I'm blamed for being probably too defensive when it comes to the outcome of the war. And I always try to explain that being most of my life in the military, I'm trying to drive my assessment on facts, not expectations that are not substantiated by facts. Our final objective is obviously fully sovereign Ukraine with the control over all of the territory, including Crimea, including Donbass. But realistically, at this time, if we want to follow that objective, we have to look at the conditions. Are they there or not? Today, Western countries or any other country can support Ukraine with military capacity, not by manpower. Because adding manpower would mean that NATO joined the war with Russia, and obviously no one wants a war between these two entities with nuclear weapons. And that's why we see immediately one limit, and it's a manpower. Ukraine, even today, is at the edge of the manpower. Regaining the control of all the occupied territories that represent now almost a quarter of the overall territory of Ukraine would cause tremendous human losses. And we have to ask ourselves the question, do we want to push Ukraine into a situation with no such a clear objective in the end, because we don't have any calculation how many losses would it take to liberate the whole territory. But the losses would be tremendous. It would also require much larger military support from Western countries. And we have to ask ourselves the question, are the Western countries willing and able to provide Ukraine with many more military capabilities to push Russia out? And if Russia gets under such a military pressure, wouldn't it be tempted to use tactical nuclear weapons? So I believe that a realistic approach at this point is to support Ukraine so that it doesn't lose any more territory holds control of the territory that is held today, not to allow Russia any further progress, and at the same time to create a lot of political and diplomatic pressure from international community, and mainly from countries with influence on Russia, and on first place China, to get Russia to the table, and then to negotiate first the ceasefire, and then the administrative arrangement. Because I believe strongly that we, I mean the Western world, should never accept that occupied territories are Russian. We can, at maximum, recognize that for the moment we consider them temporarily occupied, with final aim to get them back to Ukraine once the conditions are better. And these conditions may not necessarily be military, because I believe that if we go the way that we accept Ukraine as early as possible to the EU and to NATO, to give it both security guarantees and conditions for development, suddenly it will become much more attractive than Russia, even for people living in occupied territories. And that might be kind of a soft power, convincing them that they would be much better off with Ukraine than with Russia. So this might be the way, even longer, but with much less casualties for Ukrainians. That's just my assessment. I understand that some people may see it as probably undermining Ukrainian resolve to fight the victory, but we should be really realistic at what cost and at what time such a full victory can be achieved.
Thank you for your answer, sir. My name is Jonah Herrera Dodd. I'm a fourth-year public policy major at the college, and I have a question for you concerning the humanitarian situation with the war. As you both discussed already, there are many, many Ukrainian refugees living in the Czech Republic right now, people who have been there for as many as 2.5 or 3 years now, who are building a life there. And my question for you is, as the war continues to drag on with no clear end in sight, and this is a two-part question. The first part is, when will, if there is a pathway to citizenship, when will a pathway to citizenship open up for the Ukrainian refugees who are currently living in the Czech Republic? And the second part to that question is the same, but for Russian refugees who are fleeing the war, who don't support Russia's war against Ukraine, who want to dodge the draft and not participate. Would you welcome those refugees as well, and would you give them a path to citizenship? Thank you.
Well, this issue is a two-edged sword, because on one hand, it looks quite good if a country offers a citizenship to the refugees, but on the other, these people will be missing in Ukraine once the war is over. Because Ukraine will need human capacity for reconstruction. If all those people who were forced to leave will remain in foreign countries, then Ukraine will be cut of human intellectual capacity. So on one hand, we should create conditions for everyone who wants to go back to Ukraine to have an opportunity there. And that's why I believe that our effort today should go at least on two lines. One is military support to Ukraine, including material and financial support to successfully run the defense. And the other is to start serious preparations for post-war reconstruction. And I was advocating for setting up kind of a Marshall Plan for Ukraine, where we, all supporting countries, would find their role and specific responsibility with specific projects and funding, because having such a clear plan would encourage many Ukrainians now living as refugees in a number of countries to go back to their own country because they would see an opportunity there. If the opportunity is not present, they will obviously have a tendency to remain where they are right now. And that would be probably on one side beneficial for us as well, because these people are filling gaps on our own labor market. But the same amount of people would be missing in Ukrainian labor market. And that is unfair. So we should create conditions for those people who want to go back to have a perspective, and for those who want to remain, to ease the way to citizenship. Is it good enough? Thank you.
Wow, okay.
Hello, my name is Adam Andrushko, and I just came here as a first year from the Czech Republic, from Prague. And I was wondering whether in the long term, as a result of the Ukrainian and Russian war, if you expect any changes to the Czech mentality, as we could see, for instance, after communism, which still, I believe, the repercussions can be felt till this day.
If you only judge from the surface, watching especially social networks, you might have an impression that it's getting worse and worse, because you will find the arguments aimed against Ukrainians and against, in fact, all immigrants. But when I have an opportunity to travel around the regions and talk to a number of people, the situation is definitely different. I believe that we are much more tolerant than the surface shows to the world. And with the effect of some populist politicians, some part of the population believes that we would be better off without these people. But I always say, okay, we can send home all the Ukrainians, but then we will have to stop all our construction industry, and most of our transport and most of our services, because they depend on tens of thousands of Ukrainians working in these areas. Many are working in much more specialized jobs. So it would be our big problem to get rid of all the immigrants. The way how we have to present it is that we are an open country that unfortunately has a demographic tendency reducing number of population, and we have to be attractive for people to come to fill these gaps and to, in fact, enrich our culture and society. So far, it works pretty well, and I think that the tendencies are rather positive than negative.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Seamus Duffy. I'm a joint JD PhD student here at the University of Chicago. And I'm curious, Democratic leaders' promises are only good as the democratic will that backs them. I was wondering if you could comment on the recent local election results in the Czech Republic. In particular, do you think that the opposition's success and the recent resignation of coalition members in the parliament might seriously jeopardize the Czech Republic's commitment to the Transatlantic Alliance, to Europe, and to the war in Ukraine?
As in many other countries of the world, including the United States, we may see the political divisions to grow. And the culture of negotiation, culture of compromise is less and less present. It is the same in Czech Republic. I'm always trying to bring together opposition and government on at least some lowest common denominator. And it's more and more difficult, because they are simply too far away. That even the issues that might seem obvious for cooperation between opposition and government are simply out of question. But it doesn't prevent us for trying to find new areas for agreement. And I believe that a major part of our opposition is definitely not anti-NATO, anti-EU, or the West. they simply have a different approach to resolving domestic problems rather than external policies orientation. So even if there is a change in the government in favor of the opposition, I am not afraid of any significant foreign policy change.
Thank you very much.
Hi, good morning. My name is Gonzalo Botas. I'm from Spain. I'm an MA student, public policy in CEERES, and I'm also a civil servant in the Spanish Ministry of Economy. And first of all, I'd like to thank International House and President Pavel for coming here and giving such an interesting talk. My question is on, I think, a European security system, which is one of the questions that's been there since the end of the fall of the Berlin Wall. And I guess it links as well with what you mentioned, the change in mindset from going to the Warsaw Pact to NATO. And I was wondering if there's also been, if you've seen a change in mindset as we start talking more about and building, investing in a European security system. And also, is it possible to construct a European security system without overlapping with NATO? If so, what can we do to do that? Thank you.
Good question. It will be for another half an hour, but I will try to keep it short. Let me start with the main missions. Main mission of NATO is collective defense. Main mission of the EU is crisis management and cooperative security. EU never had an ambition for collective defense. And we shouldn't pretend that EU should be an organization for collective defense. NATO was building the structures for 75 years. Command structure, logistics, communication, intel, everything. We call them strategic enablers. Europe doesn't have it. Whenever we have a problem which is bigger than crisis management and peacekeeping operations somewhere in Europe or around, we have to call on US to provide strategic enablers. So the way ahead is not in creating a myth of a European army or EU army, because that would definitely duplicate the effort, and we don't have resources and even the will to duplicate all human and financial and logistic resources. But the way ahead should be through strengthening European pillar of NATO and making it capable of action with or without American presence. That means that would free the hands of the United States whenever they are busy elsewhere in the Asia-Pacific or in other parts of the world. But if we have an issue of a European dimension, we could always take a decision that Europe will take care about it by their own means. And if the United States want to be present in command structure, fine. If not, we should be able to do it on our own. And in that way, we have to build European enablers, at least for a smaller or mid-size scale military operation, without asking for American assets, and being also able to institutionalize this European pillar and making it available for the defense of Europe if necessary, even without American presence. Such an autonomy is not aimed against US. I think it's in fact supporting US interest.
So this will be the final question. I'll just repeat before the final question that after the president finishes his answer, please wait for the president and his entourage to leave, and then you are all warmly invited to follow the student representatives out for the ceremony. So please introduce yourself. And
hello, President Pavel. My name is Alex. I'm currently a third-year bio pre-med student here at the University of Chicago. And earlier you mentioned in your address your thoughts on military spending and economic trade internationally. And I was wondering how your previous work, both in the Czechia military and as the chairman of the NATO Military Committee, how does that influence your balance of policy both domestically and internationally in terms of economics and military strength?
Well, having a military experience, in fact, doesn't lead me to a narrow, focused view of the world. I think even being a chairman of NATO Military Committee, I was trying to suggest for our assessments to take a much broader picture. And we started inviting people from the EU who were driving, for example, energy sectors, economy, finances, because nowadays security is affected by all these areas, and to understand better the nature of the threats, we need to see them in a much broader context than just military power. Military power is probably at the tip of the iceberg, but anything beneath is in fact much more important. When you look at the military operations today, they are a mixture of traditional conventional assets with a number of assets that we call hybrid. It's an information operation, especially disinformation, cyber attacks, but also economic coercion and, for example, energy. President Putin was not hiding that energy is a weapon, and he used it many times. So we really need to keep balance between assessing all these effects on global security and include the views and recommendations from the experts from all of the sides, because that might be our strength, not to solely focus on the military might of our armies. Thank you.
Thank you. So in closing, I would once again like to thank the Eichler family. First of all, of course, the University of Chicago, International House, Professor Faith Hillis, who played a critical role in organizing this, the dean, and everyone who has contributed. Of course, most of all, we want to thank President Pavel for this wonderful and thought-provoking speech and answers to our questions. And I want to personally thank you for the wonderful gift as well.
Thank you very
But let's
much.
give him one big clap.
Thank you.